Hi, I'm Dr. Cohenauer, and when I taught this class in spring of 2015, and when I did, Dr. Brosh asked me to, you know, uh, as I went through the class, to see if there was anything that students had trouble with, and if there was, to try to, you know, uh, let him know, and then he would make some additions and try to clear things up for the students so they have a little easier time of it. So I said, fine, I'll do that, and then I was asked later to actually make some modifications to the course for summer of 2015. So I've taken it upon myself to go ahead and include a few of those things that I found that I thought would ease the students' pain based on my experiences. Uh, and so I think most students had some programming when they came into this class, but it was pretty apparent that not all of them did. So I wanted to stop and describe a few things about MATLAB. The first thing is that MATLAB, there are basically three things. There are scripts, which this is. So this is just a program. It starts at the top and it runs to the bottom. But I also have a function, so that's something different. We need to talk about that. And then the other thing is a mat file, which is a way to save data in a MATLAB format. So, and then one other thing is that I wanted to show a couple of really simple programming mechanisms that you would use if you were doing it in C or anything else, but you also need to be able to do that in MATLAB. So first of all, this is MATLAB, and you can put breakpoints in MATLAB, and the way you do that is you click this little dash here beside the line number, and you click run, and it'll run, and it'll stop there. And that's kind of nice because you can see that I have this variable called sum, which is now initialized to 0. But before I did that, I got down here, I did a CLC, which clears the screen. I did a clear, which clears the memory. And I did a close all, which closes all the graphs. And so if you have a script or a mainline program, you want to do this at the beginning of every script that you write, because if you don't, you may go in here and say, z equals 7, okay? And then if you don't clear that out later in your program, you can access that variable and your program will run just fine. But then when you send it to your instructor, his workspace is not going to have this variable in there, and it's going to crash. So if you just follow this one simple little thing to put all these three statements in at the top of every script that you write, everything will be good. So let's get on now to the first of the programming paradigms that you need to be aware of. So this is how an accumulator works. You have an accumulator. We're going to call it the sum, and you initialize it to 0, or you initialize it to whatever the value is supposed to be. And then you loop. This could be a for loop or a while loop, but I'm going to use a for loop. And I'm just going to say I is equal to 1 through 10. And then let me step down here. Now you can see the sum is equal to 0. I'm going to take the sum and I'm going to add the square of I. So I squared is, in this case, it's going to be 1 squared, which is going to be 1. And I'll step again, and there you see that the sum is indeed 1. And then if I go through and do this again, this time I was 2, and now the sum is 5. And you can display the answer. So I'm going to go ahead and then now run this, and you can see that it prints out the number 385. So the sum is 385. So you can do this on your own and see if that's the answer that you get. But let's assume it is. Now here's another one. This is very similar, but this one has a test in it. And so again, I'm going to set the sum equal to 0. This is my accumulator. So as soon as I do that, you see it sets the sum equal to 0. And I want to have temp is just a temporary variable. I'm going to find the remainder of I, comma 2. So that takes I, divides by 2, and determines if the and returns the remainder. So if I was 5, I would divide that by 2, and I would have a remainder of 1. Then if temp is equal to 0, and in MATLAB we use the equal as the equivalence operator, this generates a logical variable. So you see the answer is 0, but it's also a check mark. So that's the MATLAB symbol for a logical variable. So I could say f equal false, and there you have it. You can see it. So if if temp is equal to 0, then I'm going to sum that up. So now temp is equal to 1, so it should skip that, and it does. And now I'm going to get the next one, and now temp is equal to 0, so 0 does equal to 0, and so it's going to add that to the sum. And so now you see the sum is 4, because it started out at 0. I took I squared, which is 4, and summed that up. And so I can just continue to step through here, and I can do that. And eventually I will get to the loop, and I'll print out the answer. So let me continue to here. And so it printed out that this sum was 220. Another thing is, these are cells. You see how that color changes when I click in there? Well, when I click in there, then I can do a Control Enter, and it'll run that cell for me. All right. So now let's look at a function. Now a function's a little different. So let's So I have a equal 1, b equal 2, and c is equal to a plus b. So obviously 1 plus 2 is 3. Step, and so I'm going to display c, and the answer is 3. Now I have a function, and you can see that here's my function. A little mistake in there. Let me save that guy. And we'll go back here. So we'll run this again. Okay, so I'm going to run my function. Okay, so I'm ready to go into this function, and I'm going to step into that function in here in just a minute. But I want you to look here before I do. You see I've got a, b, c, I, sum, and temp all defined here. Well, let's look to see what happens when I step into my function. When I step into my function, I'm now in a different scope. So I'm in add func, and you see the only two variables I have are e and f. E and f. So in a function, I don't need to clear out the variables before I start, because each function gets its own set of variables, and if I were to clear these out, which I could do right now, I can say clear, and you see now I wouldn't have any variables, and so when I step, I get an error. Let's go back and do this again. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to step in again, and so now I have E and F, and I passed it A and B, but there's no need that the names have to be the same. That's a common, and it's going to return G, but that's its own name. So these names only have meaning inside of this function. And so if I step, I can see G is equal to E plus F, which is 1 plus 2, which is 3. If I continue to step, I'm ready to step out of the function, and I step, and you can see the D is 3. So A plus B is 3, and there we go. So what I want you to get out of that is the fact that when you have a function, this is the way you call it. You just call it with the variables that you're interested in, passing to it. It will run and pass back the answer that you need. So I had a number of students who did some kind of odd things with this. This is just the most common thing was that they would, as soon as they got into this function, add func, they would clear all the variables, and then they would have an error, and they wouldn't know why. So we can avoid that now. The next issue I had was with mat files. Now, mat files are very simple. If I do a save of A, B, and C, it does that, and it just saves it as a temp.mat file. Now, there are a couple of different ways, formats for this save command, but this is the easiest. So now what I can do is I can clear all the variables. As you see now my variables are clear. And now if I can load this, and again I'm loading interesting. Let me fix this here, and we'll save it, and we'll start again. All right. So now I've saved them, I cleared them, and when I say load temp, I don't have to have the mat extension. I don't have to have it. I don't have to read it with any other kind of mechanism. I can just say load temp, and it loads A, B, and C. Let me clear that again, and this time what I want to do is I just want to load the variable A. And so you can see it just loaded the variable A. So when I save a mat file, I can save it and just save the variables that I want. Or if I comment that out, we'll run him again here. You see all these variables that I have in here. So now if I save it without saying explicitly which variables I want to keep, then it saves them all. So I usually do that, and usually I will actually down here, if I'll actually list out the variables that I want. It's just a kind of a programming thing that I do. I may, if this was a complicated program, I might actually want to know what I had loaded. So anyway, I think if you just take care to apply these few simple techniques, your life will be a little easier.